Hey,
How are you?
good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. So, welcome. Could
Mhm.
you just tell everyone a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Alex Thomas Smith. I am a queer artist, West End performer, content creator, activist. My pronouns are they, he. I've worked in the West End and in television basically my entire life. Um, and yeah, that's it really. That's me. That's what I'm about.
Thank you. My first question for you is, what or who inspired you to be a performer?
So I think, oh gosh, I'd have to say my first was my sister because my sister used to be a West End performer as well. So growing up, we all were like singing and dancing and stuff. And then she was like at dance school, and then I was like, oh, like I want to do what she's doing. And then I like started going to dance school as well. And then she moved to London and started going to drama school, and then started performing in the West End. And then I went to see her and stuff, and I was just like, wow. So it really like inspired me to like want to work in the creative industry and the performing arts and like share like this like talent, this like gift that people are like bestowed with. I really wanted to like share that with the world, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's really cute, actually. I think I was quite similar, like with getting relatives to. Sometimes it's the people you're closest to who
Yeah,
inspire.
of course.
I think that's really sweet. Um, and my second question for you is, um, as a person of color, when going into a project, what do you think um, kind of would make you more comfortable? So, for example, is it like members of the crew backstage kind of also being people of color, or people kind of knowing how to take care of your hair or your makeup? Like, what is it that makes you most
Mm.
comfortable, do you think?
I think it's changed a lot over the years. I think definitely now it's people of color in the production in terms of like in terms of the office that you're dealing with, in terms of producers, in terms of casting teams, because you're always going to see, I think, like people of color within especially the backstage crew. Every job I've worked on, I always see people of color in the crew, and I love that because I'm
Yeah.
always like the people that you're like backstage with. I'm always like, oh, okay, okay, I get it. Like these are my people. This is my vibe. But I
Yeah.
need to see. I feel more comfortable when well, it's not even about feeling comfortable. It's about you can't. I don't know how you can run a company with people of color in the cast or in the crew or in the anywhere really in sound or LX, but your entire production company is white people
Mhm.
because how do you know how to accommodate different needs, different viewpoints, different ideas, different everything really? You can't just have a complete white company. And unfortunately, a lot of theatre companies and producers, everyone across the board, are white people.
Yeah.
So I think I think yeah, it's very difficult, um, but I think it has to start at the top because there's no point. I don't think there's any point in saying, oh well, we have a person of color here, and we have a person of color there, because everything that happens, everything trickles down from the top, right? So it has to change at the top.
How do you think that those conversations could be had? Because obviously, within the industry, I feel like people get comfortable with things being
Hmm.
the way they are. So, how do you think the best way to go about having those conversations, particularly with the people at the top who seem so inaccessible? How do you
Hmm.
think the best way to have those conversations are?
I don't know if I'm the best person to ask for this because I'm very much the kind of person that will just say to the producer, "How come there's no POCs on your team?" I'll just say like, "How come you're all an all white team?" So I think that's definitely my approach. I think a different approach, probably a more sensible approach, is that you can always ask these questions. Like you can always say to like your agent. I think a lot of people. I know some people that if they get offered a job or if they get asked to audition for something, I know people who are white people who will say, "Well, what does the team look like? Are they diverse? Is there someone who's a person of color? Is there someone who's differently abled?" Because it's just people. I think some people are. not willing to lend their name anymore to these like all white productions because it's not the right thing to do, and people have morals and people have ethics, and people are not doing that anymore, thankfully.
Yeah,
And I think that things, I won't even say like, oh, like things are changing and moving in the right direction, because it's not.
yeah,
Um, but I think people are starting to look at things differently, and people are starting to think about the work that they need to be doing instead of before, when it was very much like people were very closed off to it. Now
yeah,
people are open to the idea of putting the work in. They're just not doing
yeah.
it.
I,
you
I
know?
I hear that. I hear that. And when it comes to like diversity, I don't know if you've ever heard this from like people you know or whatever, but particularly when you get casting things or when you get
Mhm.
like hired for a job, be it on stage or off stage or whatever, a lot of time people will hear comments like, you're only here so that we can look more diverse or so that we have, more diversity. And I feel like although that's like a really horrible thing to say to somebody else, it's kind of like people do need to consciously make the
Mhm.
decisions to like include more people. But do you think that there needs to be like a balance? Because obviously there comes a point where you're questioning, why am I here? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I think that like if you as a white producer feel like you have a diversity quota to fill, I mean, sure, go ahead and try and fill it, but you don't need to tell the people. You don't need to vocalize. Oh, like you're here as the BAME ensemble member.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess language and terminology is the most important thing. Um, but I think, yeah, I think I don't know. It's tricky, you
Yeah.
know.
Next question is, what was it like being a person of color at drama school?
It was. Hmm. The thing is, I don't. So, I think definitely it was an experience.
Hmm.
And it was very, I feel like everything changes so fast and so quickly. When I was at drama school, it was only 2013 to 2016,
Hmm.
which isn't long ago at all. Like, it hasn't even been 10 years since I graduated. It hasn't even been, like, it's 2022, right? It hasn't even been 7 years since I graduated. But in that time, I think things have changed so much. Like, when I was at drama school, there was like no discussion of gender identity. Like, if I'd even said about my like pronouns or whatever, it was just like this unspoken about like this kind of like hush hush thing where I had to like present as masculine as possible. So it's like even in these like now, hopefully, I mean I'm not sure because I don't go into drama schools and I don't to associate drama schools. But now I think there's more of an understanding of like non-binary performers and trans performers. Whereas when I went to drama school, that was like a completely like unspoken thing. So when it comes to race, I remember at the time when I got into drama school, I remember like meeting my year and everything, and I remember it was almost like I spent my entire teen years growing up thinking because of what was forced upon me that your race is something that you can almost sell in terms of like, oh, it's great if you're a person of color because there's less
Hmm.
of you. You're so much more marketable. Like for every like, I remember being told for every 300 white person, there's only 50 of you. So I remember like when I started drama school thinking, oh my god, I'm the only like POC boy in my year. This is amazing. I'm the only one. Like I'm the like there's going to be no one else like me. So when agents come and when they're casting for shows, I'm the only one. So I remember thinking that it was an amazing thing. When now looking back with education and looking back on the things I've learned, it was a terrible thing. Because
Yeah.
why is there only one male presenting POC person in an entire year? Like
Hmm.
why is that? Why was that the norm? But it's so strange. It's so interesting how at drama school it's almost like you should, instead of in like it's not an embrace your race because you should be proud and you should be celebrating it. It's more embrace your race because that's what's gonna get you jobs. And
Yeah.
then it was funneled into us as like, oh no, those jobs aren't for you because you're a person of color. These jobs are for you, which is just barbaric and toxic and damaging. And I think drama school should be abolished.
Yeah. I mean, it's so weird how like just like you said, you're rather than being like able to celebrate who you are because there are so few of you around, you're kind of like, oh well, you're trendy right now, or you'll be great for a while whilst people catch up with like the rest of society. And I remember getting into drama school and hearing those comments still even now. And
Yeah.
like you said, like 2013 really wasn't that long ago. Those comments wouldn't even fly in 2013. Like it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. Um Next question is um oh, sorry.
No worries.
Um, what is something that you wish you were prepared for, kind of graduating and going into the industry?
Well, first of all, I had to pay tax because I had no idea. And no, I think most importantly, just I was told like so much at drama school that you had to basically be a certain kind of person, like in terms of you were only going to succeed and you were only going to work if you fit this mold, which was the ideal like West End performer of like, say for example, I present a certain way at the time. So it was very much like, okay, so if you're male presenting, you have to be muscly, you have to be, I remember being told that you have to be taller, and I was like, right. And it was also like you had to be this like basically what you had to be if you wanted to work was like a 6 foot muscly white guy. And I
Mhm.
was like, well, that's never going to be me. So I remember graduating and thinking like, oh my god, my options are so limited. I was told I looked too young, I was told I was too feminine, and I was just like, I can't change any of these things. So what but however, what I learned through being out in the industry and just working was that all of those things made me succeed but in that area. So it was in terms of like, oh, you're to this, you're to that. It was like, yeah, I look young, which is a great thing. I'm person of color, which is a great thing. I'm queer, which is a great thing. So go for those kind of roles. But so every job I've ever done has been something where I had to look young. Like all the roles I played were, like teen roles or like younger looking roles. And I remember being all I was told at drama school was you're never going to work because you look so young.
Yeah,
And now I'm in the industry, people are literally like doing everything they can to hang on to their youth and to look young. And it's like that's not a bad thing. But it's yeah, the thing I've learned and I wish I knew was just know who you are, like know what you're about and just do that really well in terms instead of trying to like be something different because you think that's what people want.
mm,
Just do you, and if they want it, they want it. If they don't, they don't.
that's really good. I feel like coming out of drama school, I mean, I'm not there yet, but
Mm.
I feel like there needs to be a middle ground where you're basically told, all right, so everything that you've been told, this is actually what it's like, and you can
Yeah.
like ignore the rest. It's really,
Basically, take everything you hear at drama school with a pinch of salt. Because also, you have to remember it's only the people that teach you, the people that tell you these things, it's only their perspective and it's only what they think is best. When you get out into the industry, every job I've ever worked on, I feel like every person on the side of the creative side has a different take, has a different perspective, has everyone's looking for something different. There's not one person who is like the king of musical theatre and they have like one set of rules.
yeah,
Everyone is all interpretation and it's all different perspectives. So everyone's looking for something else. So one person might think you are a star. One person might think you've got nothing about you. But it's not about that person, you know? Like you just have to do what you do and if it works, it works.
I agree, 100%. Next question is, um, what books or films or TV shows or pretty much anything would you recommend to anyone going into Black History Month?
Okay, so I would definitely watch The 13th on Netflix. It's a documentary about the American criminal justice system. Very important and very eye-opening. Um, and in a great book is Me and White Supremacy. That's a great book. Oh, and another documentary is The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. Very important. And then, to be honest, like I try and stay. I don't try and consume media when it comes to Black history because a lot of it is just like Black trauma, and
Mhm.
it's like it's very like blurry lines. I remember seeing a list once, and it was like things to watch for Black history, and it was like Roots,
Yeah.
and there was something else. What was it? It was like I don't know, something else. Oh, maybe When They See Us or something. And I was just like, this isn't educational. This is just
No.
trauma, and I don't want to like relive black trauma. So
Mm.
I think a lot of it is like finding the balance between what can I learn from this and what will I suffer from watching this. So always look for that when you're trying to find something to read or watch or learn about Black history, because a lot of it is just trauma.
That is so important because I know a lot of times, like, you'll open Netflix or something and it'll be like celebrating Black History Month, and then it's like, the
12
hell,
Years a
12
Slave.
Years a Slave, yeah, all of that, and it's like, it almost feels weird because, like, people are just watching this and being like, oh, poor them, anyway,
Uh-huh.
and that's like not what we're about. We deserve
Yeah.
to be celebrated on our own
Well,
history.
that's why the 13th is really good, because it's educational in terms of the system that's in place, and it starts from way back and it explains how the system has come to what it is. So instead of just being something which is like, oh, those poor people, it's more, wow, look what those people have been through because of XYZ, you know? So it's education is more important than pity.
Yes, 100%. How do you think we like there can be an improvement on how we're portrayed, like, in the media, in like those kind of things?
For good question. I mean, I don't know, and when you know, please let me know. I think I think the most important thing is stories being written where race is irrelevant.
Mm.
Like, why can I not see a Christmas movie where the family is like a black family instead of, like the poor white girl who wants her Tinkerbell shoes for Christmas? Do you know what I mean? It's like I want to watch movies and media where black people aren't like being oppressed, or
Yeah.
there is a slavery movie. Like, I just want to watch media where the race isn't the pinnacle to the story, And I feel like once that starts happening, and maybe it does happen, and maybe there's like a whole plethora of things out there that I haven't consumed and that is like, very that. But we have to break down this stigma. It's in every media though. It's across the board. Racism is so rife across every entertainment industry. Like Labyrinth released literally like I don't know if you've listened to Labyrinth's album, but it's basically like pop and piano, and they were like, "Oh, it's a grime album." And he was like, no, because you see a black man on the cover, it's not a grime album. It's literally me on a piano singing love song. So it's just racism is so rife across every entertainment entity. It's like we have to break down this barrier that like if you see a black person on a cover of a movie, like it might not be like a wacky comedy or like a
Yeah.
movie about oppression. It might just be a movie about a guy who works in a factory. It could be
Like,
anything.
yeah.
But it's this like mindset that the media is like forced out on us, that like, oh, if you see like a black girl on a cover of a CD, it's R&B. Why couldn't it be opera? You
Mhm.
know?
And I think also as well, it needs to happen more than once because a lot of the time, like a film will come out and it will be like about black people not struggling because they're black for once. Like, I know, like Black Panther or that Christmas movie Jingle Jangle that came out
Mhm.
like a couple years ago, and people will be like, "Oh, well, then you've got your film."
Yeah, 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 of
And it's like
course.
not about that. It's about keeping it going so that people eventually get it into their heads.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um
And on that as well, if you are a white person wondering, like, oh, yeah, I'd never thought about it like that, do your bit and watch those movies. If you are a white person, watch those movies. Put the numbers up so that the media people and the big execs see the numbers, they see the figures, they make their money, so they don't think that it's just like a waste of time and like a waste of money. Do your thing, buy the thing.
when it comes to like white friends and everything, what do you feel is the balance between being able to have conversations with them about this kind of stuff, like about racism and how we're portrayed in the media? Like, what's the balance between having those discussions and then being like, I don't want to talk about my trauma every
Mm.
time. I don't want to have to educate you on absolutely everything. Do you
Yeah.
think there's a balance or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because you can't be having that conversation every time, because it's just, oh my gosh, it's just relentless. But I say like a lot of the time, I I expect people to do the work themselves. So if I'm going to have a conversation with someone, if I can tell that they have no idea what they're talking about, I'll just say, okay, okay, okay. You go away and do the work, and then if you want to, we can have a conversation. But if not, we can't talk about this. Because you can't have a conversation with someone about something that they think they know about, but they absolutely have no idea about. So when someone wants to talk to me, like a white friend or whoever wants to talk to me about like racism, systemic racism, oppression, or how we're portrayed in the media, or they'll be like, oh, have you heard about this news case, whatever. I'm like, but unless you know about XYZ, we can't talk about it. So go and put the work in, and then if you want to, and if I'm in a place where I can like receive this information, then yeah, we can talk about it. But first, I expect people to put the work in.
Mm-hmm. I think it's definitely even worse on social media
Oh
because
my
you'll
gosh.
open your phone and it'll be like trauma
Uh-huh.
immediately. I feel like people don't think about what they're sharing before they share it, even on their story or with you.
Hmm.
It's like everywhere you look, and then people want you to educate them even more. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
My next question for you is, do you have any advice specifically for young people of color who are either trying to get into the industry or are graduating drama school in the next couple of years? What would you say to them?
So I would say, like I said already, definitely just like know what you're about and do that like 100. Don't change anything about yourself. Just do what you do like 100. And then second of all, I would say when you're like auditioning, finding your way, I think it's so difficult because it's very easy for me to sit here and say, don't take that, don't put up with that. But I can only say that because I've like worked for these past few years and got to a place where I feel comfortable to say, I would say to whoever, like, oh, that's not acceptable. This isn't appropriate. But when you're a graduate and you feel like, I remember leaving drama school and thinking like, oh my God, I can't say anything to anyone because what if they never hire me? Like, what if that person won't work with me or like whatever, because you don't want to make enemies. So it's a very, very difficult line of like, which also is some completely unacceptable. That we shouldn't be in an industry where if you speak out about something, you might be blacklisted, for example. Um, but I definitely think, yeah, it's tough. Like it is tough. Like it is a really tough industry. But I think don't put up with things because you think you don't have a voice. Everybody has a voice. And it's just about how you navigate that. So if you experience something that you know or you think isn't acceptable, whereas I would just go straight to the source and say, hey, you can't say that, and here's the reason why. Just learn how to navigate in a way at first that's the most comfortable for you. Maybe whether that's like calling your agent, calling a group of friends, and having like a discussion where you're like, okay, what can we do about this? Because if you experience something in an audition room, for example, that you don't think is acceptable, you can talk to equity. You can like do the thing without it coming back to you, maybe, for example. So I think never accept anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. Never put up with anything. Never just like sacrifice your happiness, but also like your self respect for anyone or anything. Because in this industry, and definitely when it comes to being POC and being like for myself, POC, gender non-conforming, like all of these things, it's just like people don't get it. People are so uneducated, so it's like they'll force their narrative onto you of what they think is acceptable, and a lot of it is so unacceptable and just dangerous for our lives.
Mm.
So definitely don't just sit there and take it. If something isn't right, find a way to speak out about it.
Yeah, and how do you think, because obviously this is like something that you have to do to like, I guess, protect yourself in like many ways, but
Hmm.
how do you think that drama schools can be more diverse? Because it's some that's like that advice is so personal to so few people, and I feel like if more people were able to go through that and put up with it, that there would be more of a change. So how do you think drama schools could be more diverse?
I think unfortunately, like it starts from like a way bigger issue of that, like the arts they don't have enough backing and enough funding. So if you think about the people that are applying to drama schools, like you have to think before then, like at schools, there's not enough resource and enough access to the arts. And unfortunately, a lot of brown and POC communities don't have the access to go to the theatre to be around that kind of art form. So
Hmm.
it already is like a whole community of people who, at primary school, secondary school, that aren't around this form of entertainment. They're not in these rooms. So then by the time it gets to the point of people who are applying to drama school, it's already way less, because the community is so left out and so disproportionized, because there's not enough funding, there's not enough support. So I think, unfortunately, like, it's a much bigger problem than just like accepting more POC people into drama school, because we need to like tackle the issue that comes way before it.
Yeah.
Um, but I think they can definitely put the work in terms of, I always hear the excuse, well, this is what we saw. But it's like drama schools, and I think they do it more now, but a lot of people, just people of color, but also just non people of color, can't afford to audition for drama school. They
Mhm.
can't afford to travel to London, so I think drama schools should be going to these areas, going to different parts of the UK, going to different schools. And I think that they do that more now, and some
Yeah.
schools do that now. But it's a very classist thing to be
Mhm.
like, you have to come to London, you have to pay to audition for our school. And I
Mhm.
know that growing up, like, it was very different for me when I applied to drama school. But I remember thinking, like, when I was much younger, we didn't have two pennies to rub together. So it was like, if it had been that case of like, you know, travel to London, get pay for an audition, the answer would have just been no, because we didn't have the money.
Yeah.
So like, and I remember even when I was 15, like, yeah, we made it work, but we've never been like, a wealthy family to be like, oh yeah, of course. So for some people, it's just not an option. So
Mhm.
drama schools, if they want to be more diverse, as they say, they need to put the work in with different communities, and think, how can we make our schools more accessible for these people?
Yeah, I agree, especially because I auditioned during the pandemic.
Hmm.
Drama schools were still charging people to like audition on Zoom, which you kind of just did it at the time because you're so desperate, or like you had to kind of choose which schools you definitely wanted to go to so that you could pay for all of them.
Hmm.
But looking back at it now, they were
It's
literally
insane.
charging for Zoom calls, which
Yeah.
is crazy to think about. Yeah. And my final question for you, just to like leave it on a lighter note, is um, what is one role that you would absolutely love to play in the future?
Something new. That's always my answer. I would love to create something new. I think when it comes to theatre, it's always evolving, it's always changing. But every role that's already done, that's the one thing that I dislike about theatre, is that there's always someone else that can do it. There's always someone else that can just slot in and do a version of it. It's one thing that I love, that everyone can give a different interpretation, but it's also something that I dislike, that it's like, okay, you can create something magical, something wonderful, and then if you don't want to do it anymore, we'll just find someone else who will. So I would love to create a role, and I'm specifically more on screen, where
Mm.
people know you for that role, and it's something so special and so dear to you that it's almost like you'd be irreplaceable in that role. Like, say for example, you think of like a role that that is like Olivia Pope in Scandal, or Viola Davis in How to Get Away with Murder. It's like those roles are so iconic, and no one else could ever replace that role. No one else could ever take away it. No one else could say, oh, now I'm Olivia Pope in Scandal. It just wouldn't work. But I think, unfortunately, in theatre, it's like the wheel keeps turning, the curtain keeps going up. So it's like whoever else wants to do it, they'll get someone else to do it. So I would love to create something which is so new and unique and fresh and so specific to me and what I'm all about, and my gender and my race and my like lived experience, that is so specific and so just raw and authentic and new, that it's just mine. I would love to do that.
That's such a great answer. Oh,
Oh,
thank you so much for coming on and like taking the time to talk to
no
me.
worries. So
Thank
nice to meet you.